Wow, pura vida. Much love and respect. Thanks for tuning in once again. Again, I'm an Access Genealogy, a free genealogy website. Now, the article continues with this, which is about the Juan Pardo expeditions. This is a very good information we're going to read about right now. It says Juan Pardo expeditions to confirm the King of Spain's claim to the southern Piedmont and Appalachian Mountains. Pardo established a chain of small timber palisade forts in 1567 and the fall of 1568. Pardo never mentioned Appalachia in his report. The provinces that Pardo visited in the mountains were vassals of the King of Appalachia. He obviously did not have permission of the High King of Appalachia to build these forts. Just as Pardo arrived back at his home base in Santa Elena during early March, he learned that all of his forts had been massacred. At least that is the official story. Supposedly, only one soldier survived. In the following months, 3 Spanish forts at the mouth of the Altamaha River were wiped out by an army led by Dominique de Gorgues. Were all the soldiers in these garrisons killed, or did many go AWOL in order to pan for gold and marry native women? We don't know at this time, all right? We don't know, right? Check this out, guys. We're about to go read some interesting books and interesting information about Juan Pardo and his expeditions. All right, let's go. We're in the North Carolina History Online Resource, or ncpedia.org, regarding this article right here on Juan Pardo. Since the other website said they didn't have any information, we're going to dig it up a little bit. Now, Juan Pardo says here, the Indians of Guatari, or Guatari, Guatari, Guatar, and first contact. The Guatari Indians, or Guatari Indians, lived in an influential settlement near Trading Fort and were led by a female chief. In 1567, again, they were led by what? A female chief. This is the same one De Soto's trying to kidnap, and the other people are helping, the other tribes are helping. In case you guys don't know, the Guatari or Guatari are a Siouan tribe. Siouan tribe. Again, a lot of tribes you never heard of, and these are a lot of the tribes that were getting enslaved. Siouan tribe. Yes, people of color. In 1567, they encountered Spanish explorers led by Captain Juan Pardo, who came through the North Carolina Piedmont with grand hopes of creating a powerful empire. A 400-year-old secret lies undisturbed beneath the waters of the Yadkin. It is a secret about Rowan's earliest recorded history, about events that predate the county's founding by nearly 2 centuries. It is a secret about the first documented Christian missionary success in the southeastern interior, indeed in all of North America. What are they talking about? So very interesting what they're saying here, beneath the waters of the Yadkin. What is the Yadkin? That's a river which became kind of like a lake. Yeah, and there's something under there that they're hiding. 400-year-old secret, right? This is Yadkin Memorial Park, right, as you can see. So this is the dam right here. As you guys can see what it happened, it flooded all this area right here. So they're saying there's actually something under there. And this is one of the colonial towns we're talking about today with Juan Pardo. All right, a little settlement here. It says it is a secret about Indians, the Guatari or Guatari, who lived in an influential settlement near Trading Fort and were led by a female chief. Again, female chief. It is a secret about Europeans, Spanish explorers led by Captain Juan Pardo, crypto Jews and crypto Muslims, who came through the North Carolina Piedmont with grand hopes of creating a powerful empire. The Guatari or Guatari welcomed the Spanish to their village in early February 1567. On that chilly winter day, the New World and the Old World came face to face on the banks of the Yadkin, and Rowan's documented history officially began. The Spanish arrival in Rowan preceded that of the Lost Colony settlers on North Carolina's Roanoke Island by 20 years. Go to the state archives in Raleigh and copy a Spanish document from 1569 offers this description of the Rowan County area and the Yadkin River at the point of first European contact in 67. Now listen to what they had to say about this area right here. This is what the Moors said, right? This is what the Moors said. They're quoting the Moors, okay? It is rich land, a land of mountain ridges and flat tracts of arable land, good for all the crops of the world. Next to this place passes a very full river. They say that any sort of ship could sail more than 20 leagues up this river. Pardo himself wrote of Guatari or Guatari, which was the name of the Indians as well as their village. This land is one of the good lands that exist in the world. Pardo, who is Pardo? We're about to see. Again, Moors. Such descriptions impressed Pedro Menendez de Aviles, governor of La Florida, the sprawling Spanish colonial territory that, according to Spain, included the entire southeast and all of the Atlantic coast. Menendez was so taken by descriptions of Guatari or Guatari that he intended it to be the site of his personal agricultural estate, a 5,500 square mile domain promised him by the crown. But the Spaniards' ambitious dream quickly withered in southern soil, and the native tribes, beset by European-born epidemics of smallpox and other diseases, faced sweeping disruptions in their way of life. The Guatari would eventually leave the Yadkin area and ultimately take on a new identity. What is their new identity? That's a deep one right there. Remember, this is a Siouan tribe. Similarly, the colonial records noting the Spanish presence at Guatari became quietly submerged beneath the waters of history. You see, they submerged this. Another town, another secret, something else they're hiding here. All these towns right under these lakes because of these dams they're building all over the place. Future videos, we're going to talk about all these so-called black towns that are under the lakes, underwater. This is one of them, original ones. Unknown in the United States for centuries, documents would eventually be discovered, though detective work by American archaeologists would not work out an accurate route for part of southeastern expedition until the 1980s. Alright, so real quick before we continue with Juan Pardo. Now Pardo, the origin of the Pardo surname, very important here. I've mentioned it before, and it actually anglicizes into something very common in American names. Now Pardo says here Hebrew is very old, surname of Sephardic Jewish origin, and that derives from the Greek and Latin name Pardus, which means leopard or panther, right? To later change to Spanish pardo, meaning brown. It means brown and referring to the color of the feline in Latin Panthera pardus. Leopard nickname of this way because of those Jews who had the characteristic tan skin color. So now just real quick in this box, I just want to show you Pardo, right? Brownish gray. Anglicization is brown. Brown. So the surname Brown, a lot of these Sephardic Jews and Moors who had the Pardo last name when they came to the Americas or when they went to Wales, England, Ireland, Scotland, they anglicized their name into Brown. They really didn't change it, they just anglicized it, right? Brown, yeah, many of the Browns are actually Pardo ancestry. We're in the website findmyheritage.wordpress.com, says Sephardic Trees blog, list of Sephardic Jewish surnames. And Pardo, as you guys can see, is one of them, which means what? Mulatto, mulatto, brown. Pardo, the color brown, drab, dark. All right, and then it goes into cloudy, flat, dual voice, but literally brown or mulatto or a dark color. The color brown, mulatto, brown, pardo. Real quick, back in the book, Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. Remember, we learned this in this book. Again, this is another refresher. It says here, owing to its central location, Puerto Rico was subjected to repeated depredations by French, who's the French, English, these are literally just tags, and Portuguese privateers, right? English privateers, French privateers, they're all the same. Who's the privateers? Remember, who's these pirates? They were going after the Catholic ships. A fort was built by the Spanish settlers from 1530 to 1540 to defend the island. Spanish officials on the island during the late 1500s included the following: Menendez de Valdez, Pedro Suarez, Pedro, Telo de Guzman, Pardo de Osario, Antonio Calderon, Antonio Mosquero, and Juan de Haro. These surnames further suggest that the island was Sephardic and Moorish community. Okay? Pardo. Continues as the surnames in the Puerto Rico sample are strongly suggestive of Converso, Morisco, backgrounds: Bautista, Benitez, Bernal, Betancourt, Borges, Candelaria, Carrero, Casillas, Castellano, Costello, Colón, Córdoba, Correa, Cruz, De Gracia, De Jesus, De las Reyes, Diaz, Espinosa, Phoebus, or Phoebus, Farbus, Forbes, Ferrer, Flores, Garcia, Guzman, Jimenez, Leon, Lopez, Marrero, Maisonet, French Maisonette, Medina, Arabic, Mendes, Miranda, Muniz, Navarro, Nieves, Oliveiras, Olmeda, Ortega, Padilla, Pardo, Perez, Reyes, Robes, Romero, Rosie, Santiago, Santos, Vega, Janes, and Sayas, Morisco, Converso Morisco names, again. In another part of the book it says other Sephardim carry Berber surnames. For example, Ohana, O'Hara, O'Kanine, O'Soline, Malkar, Nar, Montel, Savora, Pardo, which is brown, right, is brown, same family, Nechem, Abban. Continues, says among the Sephardic surnames in the Caribbean identified by Arbel R, and it lists all these, so I ain't going to read them all now no more. Then we got Pardo down here, right? Again, Pardo. All right, now it's going to talk about what we're reading today about Juan Pardo. It says in this book, right, Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. It says, finally, in 1566, the Spanish succeeded in establishing the Santa Elena colony near the present-day border of South Carolina and Georgia at Beaufort. The settlers numbered 1,500 men and 14 women. All right, 14 women compared to 1,500 men. Do you guys hear that? So how were they going to multiply? They needed other women, right? They couldn't do it with just 14 women. I mean, they could, but that would be crazy, right? So they went to the local women, remember. 1,500 men compared to 14 women only. So you know they took on wives. From Santa Elena, Captain Juan Pardo, Sephardic surname Brown, Sephardic surname Brown, set off 2 expeditions, establishing forts as far westward as Knoxville, Tennessee. Santa Elena was a thriving seaport colony with craftspeople, families, and a Morisco pottery-making facility. You guys hear that? Santa Elena craftsmen and merchants traded with Mexico, Italy, and Spain. They never taught us none of this stuff in school. They want us to think that there was nothing there before Roanoke or before Jamestown. Some even owned Chinese porcelain. They were trading far and wide. Soldiers stationed in the town were drawn from a cross-section of Spain: Marchena, Gibraltar, Cadiz, Sevilla, Bilbao, Leon, Salamanca, Toledo, and Palencia. Notably, all areas with substantial Sephardic and Morisco populations. Those were Moorish towns. A list of names of settlers is given in Appendix J. As is readily apparent, most are almost certainly Sephardic Jewish or Converso families, okay? So you guys kind of get the point. As it says here, Pardo, Spanish, Portuguese, brown, mulatto, panther, Black Panther, from here, man, from El Pardo, Spain, Pardo, brown, mulatto. This is another book. It's called The Melungeons, The Resurrection of a Proud People. An Untold Story of Ethnic Cleansing in America by N. Brent Kennedy with Robin Vagan Kennedy. And I'm going to go to chapter 2, and it says, in the beginning, no one really knows when the Melungeons were first discovered, although by the time Tennessee Governor John Sevier encountered them in August 1784, their numbers were apparently substantial. They lived in sizable communities, primarily on the upper ridges of the eastern Tennessee, counties of Hancock, Hawkins, and Rhea, and Ashe, Johnsey, Surrey, and Allegheny counties in western North Carolina, and in what are now Wise, Scott, Lee, and Dickinson counties in southwestern Virginia. According to Lewis Davis of the Nashville Tennessean, the so-called Melungeons were dark-skinned people, okay? Dark-skinned people, reddish-brown complexion people, supposed to be of Moorish descent. Moorish descent, who were neither Indian nor Negro, but had fine European features and claimed to be Portuguese. All right? Portuguese Moors, like I said. More precisely, it was Portuguese, as they themselves pronounced it. They claimed descent from a group of Portuguese who had either been shipwrecked or otherwise abandoned on the Atlantic coast. Abandoned. Remember, all these people who are fleeing all these forts. We just got all these expeditions, right? It is important to know that regardless of where the individual pockets of these people dwelt, the same Portuguese origin was consistently offered to explain their existence. All right, so now I'm going to belly flop to page 104 of this book. It says, Meanwhile in the New World. This here, Joseph Judge in the March 1988 issue of National Geographic beautifully describes the everyday life of the Santa Elena colonists, from their tradition of worship to their relationships with the various surrounding Native American tribes. Judge's article also touches on the exploits of one Spanish officer, Juan Pardo, who is probably at least one of the keys to the Melungeon scenario. Dr. Chester De Prater of the University of South Carolina's Institute of Archaeology and Anthropology, a Melungeon Research Committee member, along with his highly respected colleague, Dr. Stanley South, are key members of the research team excavating Santa Elena. The Juan Pardo connection. In 1566, Captain Juan Pardo, a Spanish officer, most likely of Portuguese origin, recruited some 200 soldiers, all right, probably from the mountains of northern Spain and Portugal, that is the Galician mountains, and brought them to the Santa Elena colony. Pardo assigned these soldier settlers, right? Soldier settlers. Remember these prisoners of war, Moors, remember? To a series of 4 or perhaps 5 forts in northern Georgia, western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, or a combination thereof, depending on the interpretations of various scholars studying the question. Historian J.G. Hollingsworth, for example, suggests that Pardo left 30 soldiers in a fort located in what is now Surry County, North Carolina, part of the old Indian territory of Shula, or Guara, as it was called by the Spanish, right? The Guatari. More intriguing is Hollingsworth's contention that the Spanish continued to operate a fort and a mine as late as 1670 near present-day Lincolnton, North Carolina. Although these Spanish would of necessity have been neither new arrivals or descendants of Pardo soldiers settlers. In any event, Pardo left these soldiers with orders to hold the land for King Felipe and His Holiness the Pope, and then Pardo returned to Spain. 2.5 years later, he once again sailed to the Santa Elena colony, this time possibly bringing the wives and children of a number of these soldiers. Santa Elena, after all, was to be a permanent settlement, and a permanent settlement required more than a single male soldiers. So they're making up about the wives, possibly, right? Remember, they brought all males. They needed women. Yes, they got the Indian women. What is of great interest here is that if these soldiers were indeed recruited from either the Galician mountains or southern Spain, then there is every likelihood that they and their families were of mixed Berber, Jewish, and Basque heritage, while they were undoubtedly conversos, all right, cryptos, and practicing believing Catholics or new Christians. Spain's policy was to send only Catholics to settle new territories. They conceivably could have been less than equal citizens in Spain and Portugal intent on reconquest. Even more importantly, they also would have been far easier recruits for resettlement in the New World than the so-called native Iberians or those who more pure or wealthier families. All right, again, they're letting you know these are the ones they were trying to get rid of: the Inquisition, the Moors, and the Sephardic Jews. Indeed, in 1568, just 1 year after their immigration to Santa Elena, the Inquisition against the Moors went into high gear. It is quite possible that these soldiers and their families saw the writing on the wall and took advantage of an opportunity to leave before the going got even tougher. That young Christian men of Moorish origin were being recruited for the New World service is well known. As Fernand Braudel puts it, in the 16th century, Seville and the Andalusian hinterland, still half Muslim and hardly half Christian, were engaged in sending their men to settle whole areas of Spanish America. Okay, Moors. They were sending Moors to settle America. These areas still bear the mark of their origins. Carlos Pereira, all right, Pereira became Perry. Anglicized version of Pereira is Perry, has perfectly described it. Spain sent all her sons down to this southern region, opening onto the sea. Although it may be pure coincidence, the darker-skinned Spanish and Portuguese recruits assigned to Brazil and the Caribbean during this same time period were known as Pardos. a different classification from either Negroes or mulattoes, both categories utilized by the Spanish military, while Pardo can today be translated as black or dark. Again, what does Pardo mean? Black or dark. Could the term have originated with Juan Pardo? Or more likely, could Juan Pardo himself have been of Moorish or Jewish origin, with his name originating from the term? Whatever was the situation, the idea of a connection is an intriguing possibility, better left to qualified historians and linguists. Continues, says David J. Weber, in his brilliant historical study of the Spanish frontier in North America, unlike some others in his field, at least leaves open the question regarding Pardo settlers. Unlike De Soto, Pardo planted settlement along the way. He built a chain of 5 small fortifications, with a detachment assigned to each one. Pardo returned safely to Santa Elena, but his path of garrisons disappeared. Their few defenders either killed by Indians or absorbed into the Indian tribes. Continuing in the book, it says here in chapter 6, putting it all together, he says, I contend that the remnants of Joao or Juan Pardo's forts, joined by refugees from Santa Elena, remember these are all Moors and Sephardic Jews, and possibly a few stray Dominicans and Jesuits, exiled Moorish French Huguenots. Moorish French Huguenots. We can't make this up. Why is this book saying the same thing that we've been saying, right? Moorish, the French Huguenots are Moors. Moorish French Huguenots and escaped Acadians. Who are the Acadians? Check out my Acadian video. They're Huguenots too. These were black folks as well, along with Drakes and perhaps other freed Moorish Iberian captives. All right, we're going to get into Drakes again. Survived on these shores. Combined forces over the ensuing years moved to the hinterlands, intermarried with various Carolina and Virginia Native Americans, and eventually became the reclusive Melungeons. You hear that? So a lot of these Moorish, Sephardic runaways or settlers that survived, escaped, dissenters, ex-prisoners of war, ex-soldiers, they kind of all got together because they kind of were the same people. And they eventually moved to the higher lands, intermarried with various Carolina, Siouan, and Virginia, Powhatan, Algonquin, Muskogee-speaking tribes, right, women, and eventually became the reclusive Melungeons. I as strongly contend that the Moorish element was, at least in the beginning, the predominant one. All right, the Moorish element was the predominant one in the beginning, explaining why the probably Moorish self-descriptive term Melungeon came to be associated with the various population regardless of their location. The gene frequency data we have supports just such a heritage, and the circumstantial evidence, in the words of Press Officer Luis de Souza at the Portuguese embassy in Washington, is quite credible and quite convincing. Certainly, if Drake's Moors, we're going to get into Francis Drake, all right? Moors were primarily men. As we know, they were the tendency for their children to adopt the father's heritage would be, 1, strong, given the patrilineal tradition of the Moors, and 2, as a result of this tendency, would better explain the widespread dissemination of the so-called Melungeon heritage. Several hundred Moorish men could leave quite a genetic and cultural heritage after but 1 generation, to say nothing of the estimated 14 generations since their arrival. Additionally, the accompanying claim to be Portuguese fits with both the South American Moors and the Pardo Santa Elena component as well. Portuguese or not, it would have been the smartest, politically correct heritage for either group to claim, given the circumstances of the time. All right, so I know exactly what that means. So if you have so-called Portuguese in your heritage, it actually, most likely is a crypto Jew or crypto Muslim Morisco.